Welcome to class ENG 3. We are at number 30 and this is unit 5. This is our last week of this course. So here, as always, are all the ways to reach me. I'm in the studio right now. You're welcome to call 1-800-465-7144. I will be back in the office after this, and that's 1-800-667-3703. You can fax your work at 1-800-463-7852. If you have a question for me, you can email me at jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. If you want to rewatch a recording, it will be on YouTube at capital G, capital P, ERCY, space, capital W, AHSA. Now, submit your assignments to student.work@nnec.on.ca. If you can, please be sure to attach the assignment rather than just putting it in the body of your email. I've had a few people taking a picture and then just sticking it in the email, and it's actually really hard for us to print off and download and put into the system that way. So if you can attach it instead, that's a lot easier for us to work with. Make sure to have your full name on it, the lesson number, assignment number, and what course. Hang on a second. Plus what course. There's a lot of courses going on, and I'm responsible for quite a few. It's important to make sure you list it because I don't always know which assignment goes with which if I've got a lot of stuff coming in at once. If I am not sure where an assignment goes, I don't mark it right away. I just wait until I can talk to the students because every assignment has a different marking scheme. So that is the important spot to send it to, okay? All right, we are going to talk a little bit about word meaning. Words can have a dictionary definition, which is what we call its denotative meaning, like what it means just literally. But words can also have overtones or carry positive, negative, or added meaning than simply what the dictionary lists. Sorry, I meant to start this up ahead of time. We will take a quick look at this.
Hello, readers. Today, let's talk about
let's see if we have any sound.
specifically the way that words make us feel. That's right, I'm talking about connotation, the way a word feels, the context around it. Imagine a rock in a stream. Well, connotation is the way that culture flows around a word. This is distinct from denotation, which is more like the dictionary definition of a word. Companion and buddy both have similar denotations. They both mean friend, but companion is a much more formal sounding word than buddy, which originated as a piece of slang from the 19th century. So even though their denotation or their literal definition is the same, they feel different. The connotation of companion is formal, while the connotation of buddy is friendly and casual. Good readers pay close attention to the words the author chose to use. They pick those words for a reason. How do those words make you feel? What is the author trying to imply? How do the words help to propel the overall tone or theme of the text? So connotation is about word choice, sure, but it's also about setting a tone. One way you set tone is by expressing an opinion. So some words may have a similar denotation, but very different connotations. For example, let's say I was describing someone whose behavior was nice, like they were behaving in a kindly way. The way I describe that person can express how I, as a writer, feel about that behavior. If I trust the person, I could describe them as sweet as sugar. Oh, Jake's such a sweet guy. Love that Jakey boy. But if I didn't trust that person, like if I thought that this hypothetical Jake's show of kindness was fake, I could say that he was cloying or syrupy. And those words also mean sweet, but they have a connotation of too much. Cloying means too sweet. So you can sort these words into positive and negative connotations. Sweet is positive, cloying is negative. Some words will have neutral or uncertain connotations, and that's okay too. But it doesn't just have to be straightforwardly positive, negative, or neutral either. You can just use connotation for the sake of poetic license or building a motif. Let's say I was writing a story about someone who started a plant nursery, and I wanted to use words that described growth. But I also wanted to build in connotations about nature or plants throughout the piece. In this example, I'm a newspaper reporter, and I'm doing a profile of someone in my town. Let's call her Genevieve. Genevieve Jenkins, proprietor of Jenkins Orchard Supply. She's ready for the outdoors. She's got her big sun hat. She's got her hoop earrings. She's got a little name tag. She's got a little plant necklace. She seems like a nice person. Okay. I could say Jenkins Orchard Supply was a great success in its new location, but if I wanted to put in a little bit of that nature note, I'd say Jenkins Orchard Supply flourished in its new location, because flourished is related to the word flower. To flourish is to grow. Grow and flourish have a similar denotation, but they have different connotations. Grow can refer to plants, but it can also refer to anything that increases in size. A little sponge toy can grow when you place it in a cup of water, but it won't flourish. Flourishing has a connotation of flowering and success. Continuing this idea, I could talk about how Ms. Jenkins decided to settle on the location of her plant nursery, and rather than say that she settled into the neighborhood, I could say instead that she put down roots there. Now, these are kind of extreme examples. These nature words and expressions are getting kind of close to jokes or puns, but I'm trying to be extra obvious here about the plant thing so that you can learn to detect more subtle connotations in the future. And connotation can be so personal, too. There may be words that have important emotional resonance for one person that are basically meaningless to anybody else. When I was a kid, I cycled through pretty much every team sport. Baseball, soccer, basketball. I wasn't good at any of them, but I was especially terrible at basketball. And I remember very particularly the way the coaches would call out, "Good hustle, David, good hustle," because that was the only thing I could do especially well. I couldn't dribble, I definitely couldn't shoot, and my passing game was not great. So even now, I associate the phrase "good hustle" with "you're not especially good at basketball." Which is a shame, because, I'm tall now. My experience is specific to me. It's not universal. It's very unlikely that you share that same connotation with the word hustle. A fun game to play is to come up with a word, and then list all the synonyms for that word you can imagine, and then sort them by connotation. If you are, like me, the kind of person who enjoys sorting jelly beans by color, you will get a similar amount of satisfaction from that exercise. So, look out for connotations as you read, as you write. Words carry their dictionary meanings, but they also carry other cultural meanings as well. And that's connotation. You can learn anything. David out.
Okay, I just wanted to include that. I thought he did a really nice job of explaining the difference between connotation and denotation. So I wanted to talk about this in terms of personality traits. This is one where I see it come up a lot. Not only when we're talking about other people, but when we're talking about ourselves, or when an author is writing about somebody. And like he was talking about how somebody can be described in a way that means the same thing, essentially, but one makes you view the character or that person in a positive light, and one makes you think of them somewhat negatively. So this is kind of my list of different ones that I thought kind of have the same meaning, more or less, but they sound a little different. Like I could say somebody's really determined to succeed, or I could say, oh, that person is so stubborn, right? Stubborn has a different feel. It's really the same thing, right? But it feels a little different. Oh, that person's such a very trusting friend. Oh, that person's naive. Naive makes me feel like, oh, that person's going to get, tricked or caught out or get taken advantage of. Protective versus interfering. I was thinking of parents here. Oh, that parent's so protective. That's such a positive thing. Or that parent's always interfering. Now, it may be the exact same kind of impulse, but one, you're looking at that in a very good light, and one, you're not thinking so good of that parent. Thorough. Oh, my friend is so thorough. Or that friend is so nitpicking. Again, it's the same meaning, right? It denotes the same idea, but one's positive, one's negative. We also had agreeable versus people pleasing, leading versus controlling, tidy versus a neat freak, flexible versus wishy-washy. All right, so along with the idea of connotation is a concept that they sometimes call shades of meaning, where you have a lot of synonyms for the same idea, but they have a different level of intensity. So below I've listed some words that all convey the concept of anger. But some of them you think of being as like a very mild level of anger, and some of them might be a very high level of anger because these different words have different connotations. So let's take a look at these and then think about where would we put these, which is the lowest level and what would be the highest level to us. And you might sort them slightly differently to me. Remember how I was talking about different words have a personal meaning as well, not just a cultural meaning, where if somebody's always referred to like an anger, a huge level of anger as a meltdown, you might think of that as like the highest level, whereas I might think of berserk, like a Viking fighting in a frenzy of anger as the highest level. So again, there's a personal level to all of this as well. Okay, so we got annoyed, enraged, irritated, mad, upset, contrary, berserk, angered, argumentative, and meltdown. Now, for me, as I was saying, berserk would be the highest level. That's what I would consider like the most extreme. I think I would say either enraged or meltdown. I'm going to put enraged next, I think, because meltdown has a little bit of a connotation of a child freaking out to me. Like, oh, my teenagers had a meltdown today. I don't generally think of adults melting down, and I don't necessarily think of violence. Whereas enraged or berserk do make me think of violence a little bit. On the lower level, annoyed is pretty mild. I would say irritated is probably my least angry one to me. And annoyed would be slightly higher than that. Ooh, you know what, though? Now that I think about it, I'm going to put contrary. Contrary is that kind of person that just, oh, they're always got to be in opposition. They may not even be feeling anger, but if you don't know them very well, it may come off as anger. So I'm going to put that as kind of maybe the first level here. Um, And then these ones in the middle are kind of very similar to me. I've got mad, upset, angered, and argumentative. I think mad might be the next one to me, and maybe upset, and then maybe angered, with argumentative being somewhere in here. Although it could go somewhere else. But I feel like if somebody's arguing, they're past just being annoyed. I feel like you could be irritated and nobody might ever know. Even with annoyed, oh, they might just frown. But if you're getting to the spot of argumentative, people are probably aware that you're a little unhappy. So that is how I would sort them, but you might have sorted them a little bit differently. The other thing he didn't talk about, but I thought was kind of important, is sometimes words can change their connotation meanings over the years. They go from neutral to negative, or they can come to mean something else entirely. So, for example, if I say something was homely, these days I'm kind of implying that I think it's ugly. But at one point, it meant something more like comfortable or cozy that made you feel like you were at home. It was a kind of a positive word. Awful used to mean something more like awesome rather than what it's come to mean, which is more like terrible. Nice, I say you're a nice person. That's kind of a positive thing these days, but it used to mean something more like silly. Fantastic used to mean something that was in your imagination. If I said, oh, that's fantastic, I didn't mean like it's great. I meant like it was unrealistic. It was something you'd invented, like a unicorn would be fantastic. Um, so that's something that can happen over a period of quite a long time or a period of short time. Um, there's a lot of words that we use for disabilities and things like that that I find have really changed over the years. And I didn't want to, upset anybody by discussing all that kind of stuff here, but I do find it interesting that sometimes in the span of like 10, 15 years, a word can go from being very positive to being perceived as very negative because people have just sort of changed how the word is viewed. So it's been to be mindful, not only when you're writing, but when you're reading something that's much older, you might read something that has a very negative connotation to you. but may not have been entirely negative at the time that it was written. Oh, the other thing, many words also have multiple meanings depending on how they're used. So, for example, bark can mean the outside layer of a tree, or it could mean the sound a dog makes, or it could also mean somebody shouting something out in an angry way that makes us think of the way a dog barks. So, a lot of times, the only way to tell is from the context of the sentence. So, for example, if I say he heard a bark outside, well, we know we can't hear the outside layer of a tree, so it must be an animal sound. Something similar would be jam, which could be a sweet paste made out of fruit. It could be a problem or a difficulty, like, oh, we got into a jam about the money we borrowed, I guess. I couldn't think of how to phrase that. Sorry. Or it could have be a machine that's got something stuck in it, like there is a paper jam in the printer. Ooh. So that word has multiple meanings. And unless you're reading the sentence, you don't necessarily know. Some words have lots of meaning. I don't know if we did. Okay, hang on. I'm going to quickly kind of look at this just so you can see. So hot is one that has so many meanings. It's insane. We've got having a relatively high temperature, capable of giving a sensation of heat, burning, searing, or scalding, having heat in a degree exceeding the normal body heat, marked by fierceness or violence, or kind of like angry, sexually excited, eager or zealous, having or causing the sensation of an uncomfortable degree of body heat, fresh, um, bright or glowing, having a component that creates a burning or a spicy kind of tingling sensation in your mouth. What else have we got here? Intense and immediate interest, unusually lucky or favorable. Oh my goodness, this goes on. That was just the adjectives. There's also adverb meanings of the word hot, there's noun meanings, and there's verb meanings. So that one word has so many different meanings in a sentence. You got to be kind of aware of what they're describing to have an idea what they're saying. Which brings me to one thing. I had a student mention something on the weekend where they felt bad that they were just kind of guessing over words, and I was like, oh, that's totally acceptable. That's absolutely what we do, right? It's called using context clues to understand the meaning, right? And we do this so naturally we don't even notice we're doing it. We do it in conversations too, right? If somebody uses a word that we don't know, we often just make a guess at it. I mean, if it's really important and we don't get it, we'll ask, but we make a good guess a lot of times, right? We're so used to all these multiple meanings that we generally choose the correct one right away. The context are like the words before and after the unusual word combined with the overall meaning of the sentence. And like I said, sometimes you come across a word we don't know. It's perfectly fine to use this context of the sentence to make a good guess. It's also fine to stop and use the dictionary if you want. So, for example, if I use a sentence like, he was faced with a conundrum on what to do with the money, spend it on rent or on good clothes for the job interview. Okay, so here's my problem word that I don't know what to do with, conundrum. Okay. Well, it looks like he's got a choice, so maybe choice might be a word. He's going to spend it on, he was faced with a choice on what to do with the money, spend it on rent or on good clothes for the job interview. So choice works. Decision might work. He was faced with a problem. That might work as well, right? If it's just like a one off, like the word's happening once and then you're going on, I wouldn't worry too much about it unless you find it's crucial to the sentence. But if you find it's a word that's coming up a lot, especially if you were reading like science information or something, you might want to take the time to go and look at the dictionary and make sure you understand what it means. Okay. So today's work. I've listed a lot of this. We're not necessarily going to get through all of this today. Depends on how long things take. That's okay. We'll just go on to it tomorrow. First of all, you're going to read the story called The Unnumbing of Corey Willhouse. Sorry, I've got Whithouse. It's not Whithouse, it's Willhouse. I apologize. I fixed that in the other spot and then I forgot to fix it here. Okay. And then we're going to do questions number 1 and 2 on the story called The Unnumbing of Corey Willhouse. Then we're going to look at the Canadian Youth Business Foundation in the textbook and then the current website. And then we're going to answer questions number 3 and 4 using the information from the Canadian Youth Business Foundation. Then question number 5 is kind of related to business, but it's not grounded in any one particular story. And then I've got some other stuff that if we have time, we will do. And if we not, we'll go on to tomorrow, which is how to write a formal letter. And then using that information, we can do question number 6. And then I don't know if we'll have time to get to the spot where we talk about how to write and send email, which we probably already know, but I just kind of, it's part of one of the readings, so I've included it. Okay. So The Unnumbing of Corey Willhouse is on pages 192 to 207. It's probably one of the longer stories we've read so far. This is a short story about a teenager called Corey Willhouse who helps to rebuild a neighborhood grocery store. And the story starts with Corey waking up to an announcement about a fire at a local grocery store. It's on the radio. Now, this announcement immediately triggers a flashback scene. And a flashback is a method of storytelling where the author wants to set the main part of the story in the present, but occasionally they flash back to a previous time when the character was younger, so you can experience that past memory for yourself rather than simply summarizing it for you. The thing is, I do find sometimes people find flashbacks a little bit confusing. How can you tell when a flashback has begun? Sometimes a writer will signal that a flashback is about to begin in several ways. They may leave an extra large space before the next paragraph. They may italicize the text. Italicize is when everything goes slanted. Let me just kind of show you what I mean. If I take this and hit the I, it all goes slanted. That's a really common way to show it, a flashback. They may set it up with an extra margin within the story, like indent it a little bit, or they may use words that are a signal that a flashback is about to happen. Some phrases might be things like, he suddenly remembered, or that day so long ago came back to him as vivid as when it happened, or memories came flooding in. A flashback can be really confusing if you didn't understand the signals and that the next part of the story is happening in the past, not right now. It is a break in the continuity of the story. Some readers love them, some readers really hate them. It's fine if you're one of those. It's just I think that sometimes the reason people hate them is they didn't realize they were happening, so they just found the story confusing. Now, flashbacks don't go on forever. They always end at some point. So a writer might signal the end of a flashback in a variety of ways. First of all, they might leave a large space at the end of one paragraph before the next one starts, and that's trying to show you, oh, that little flashback is done, and now we're back in the present. They may stop using italics for the text. If you've had several paragraphs that were in italics and they suddenly stop, okay, well, the writer's telling you, hey, we're back to the present again. The paragraphs might also begin again at the regular margin line. If the writer had used an indenting method of showing you the flashback, then they will stop indenting. Sometimes the writer will use words to signal that the story has returned to the present time. Some phrases might be, he shook off the memories. The memories faded away as he looked around. The present intruded on his recollection of the past. Anything that signals to the reader, the flashback is done. Sometimes they're a bit subtle and it can be hard to tell. And that's fine. If you're suddenly confused, that's probably a signal that they've changed, the flashbacks ended. Go back and read that part and you can usually find where they've switched over. All right, here are the questions for this. In Unit 1 of the course, you completed an assignment about volunteering. Including why you think volunteering is important. Perhaps you've chosen to do a little research on the importance of volunteering as part of your culminating activity for Unit 3. Once again, the issue of volunteering appears in this unit. In the story, The Unnumbing of Corey Willhouse, Corey decides to become a volunteer. Describe the situation that leads to his decision and how he spends his time as a volunteer. This needs to be one paragraph containing at least 7 sentences for 10 marks. Hang on. Remember to use the writing process as you complete this question. Make yourself some jot notes. Think about, why did Corey volunteer to help rebuild the grocery store? What are some of the activities he does while they're volunteering? You could also include important conversations or important thoughts that Corey has while doing the volunteering, and then think about how to summarize all the above in a closing sentence. Remember that a closing sentence can be written in a variety of ways. You can restate the opening sentence. You can list the main points of the paragraph in an abbreviated format. You can draw an overall conclusion. And sometimes people will state an opinion on the overall events. Remember to revise the first draft. Check that you've answered the question fully. Check that your sentences make sense. Look at your sentence structure and be sure to revise any run-on sentences. Be sure that at least some of your sentences start with transition words or phrases such as next, then, after that, in addition to, as well as, those kind of things. Look at the word choice. Are there any other words that might convey your meaning better or help you to avoid repetition? Think about the work we did today about connotation versus denotation. Look for spelling errors. Check for punctuation errors, especially with commas. It's one of the big areas we're having issues with. Check with capitalization errors, especially making sure that the word I is always spelled with a capital letter, okay? Some people are still doing a lowercase I that has the dot over it, but you can't do that because it's referring to a person. It's kind of like a name, and just like you wouldn't spell somebody's name with a lowercase letter in the front, we don't use a lowercase letter for the word I. All right. Question number 2 on the same story is, do you think that Corey has learned anything from his experience as a volunteer? And then this one is just a simple one. Write 1 or 2 sentences. It's only worth 2 marks. You don't need to do a bunch of revision for that. Okay, so we're going to switch now to the little text about the Canadian Youth Business Foundation. This is some background info on them before we kind of start exploring about them. Small and medium-sized enterprises play a vital role in our economy. The Government of Canada is working to help small businesses access the resources and capital that they need to grow into globally competitive firms. The Canadian Youth Business Foundation supports these efforts by filling an important gap and providing support to the next generation of business leaders by offering financing of up to $15,000 to young entrepreneurs aged 18 to 39 who would not likely be able to secure financing elsewhere. The CYBF is different from other programs in that it matches its clients with experienced volunteer business mentors that provide them with business advice, coaching, and support. And this combination is key to the entrepreneur's success. The CYBF has helped approximately 5,600 young entrepreneurs to establish successful businesses that have created some 23,000 new jobs since 2001. The Government of Canada has invested over $75.5 million to support the CYBF. Economic Action Plan 2010 allocated $10 million to support young entrepreneurs. Economic Action Plan 2011 invested $20 million over 2 years, and the Economic Action Plan of 2013 provides a further $18 million over 2 years to enable the CYBF to continue its important support to young entrepreneurs. Okay, in our textbook on page 28, 29, they've taken a screenshot of a site geared towards Canadian youth interested in business. Now, that's from a while ago. There is still a current website from this company, and it looks like this. They now call themselves Futurepreneur. Doesn't quite roll off the tongue, but anyways, so it looks a little different if you're looking for it, okay? Which you're going to have to, because some of the questions we're about to do, you need to look at the website to be able to figure things out. Interestingly, I was kind of poking around looking at things. They specifically have a section for Indigenous entrepreneurs who are looking for startup funds to start or buy their own business. So there's like a little video about Indigenous entrepreneur Dawn Forrest. They support entrepreneurs aged 18 to 39, helping them to launch or buy their own business. They have up to $60,000 in financing, an expert mentor for up to 2 years, and access to resources. And there's a little link here. Let's see if we can kind of quickly just kind of go there. So this is specifically geared just for this part, not the whole site, but just this part is geared for Indigenous people. There's a little, let's see here. Come up.
Hi, my name is Dawn Forrest. I created Innovoma Designs. If you want to go buy gifts, people usually come here. It's funny, like we'll know people's birthdays, and if their other family member comes, we're like, oh, your brother already got that for your mom. So it's a nice place. I started working really young. I was a dishwasher first, and then I started working part-time jobs for my dad. So he did different things, and I always worked in his art gallery. That's where I got all the inspiration from. When I was pretty young, I left to go to college. I had to move to Montreal. When you're a minority, you really stand out, and people always highlighted the fact that I was, always talking about Inuit like it was like we were bad people. Like, you guys all just live in the streets. It was really hard to adapt to that. I didn't really have a voice back then. I was always into art, and I went to art school and everything. But here, I just wanted to do everything. All my art, I wanted it to be related to my culture, and it just became a thing for me. This brand, it's to give us a voice. We're not just the box that they think we're, like the stereotyping. We're so much more. There's so much more to our culture. It's such a rich culture that I wanted people to be proud of where they're from, and putting it on apparel that they could use. If it helps, with that, then yeah, it's really satisfying.
Okay, so this is just a little portion of the site if you want to go back and take a look at things. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly read the question so that then we can kind of go on. It says, question number 3, using the internet, you are to visit the website futurepreneur.ca for Futurepreneur Canada. The website will look different from how it appears. What is Futurepreneur Canada? Tell us in 1 or 2 sentences, and that's worth 4 marks. So hang on, let me just go over here. Here is the main site. Talks about who we are, talks about entrepreneurs. You can see here for entrepreneurs, for Black entrepreneurs, for Indigenous entrepreneurs, for side hustle entrepreneurs and benefits of mentorship. Get involved, resources, and then a blog. Here are the services they offer. Turn your idea into a real successful business. They're also obviously always looking for people who are mentors, who want to help people become entrepreneurs. Here are documents, how-tos, and templates. Here is a place where you can network with other entrepreneurs, gathering advice, what's happening. So this is a really interesting website that is worth looking around at. Just out of curiosity, the blog, what comes up in the blog? Okay. So just kind of like recent news is coming up on the blog. Most popular post, choosing between federal and provincial incorporation, avoid these common tax season mistakes, how to land your product onto retail shelves. Okay. So you kind of explore about that until you can answer. What is Futurepreneur Canada? All right. The next question, question number 4, is also on the same website. And it says, what is an entrepreneur? Which you might need to look up in the dictionary. That's fine. It states in a link on the website that entrepreneurs need money. List any 5 requirements mentioned in order for an entrepreneur to be assisted by Futurepreneur Canada. And that's going to be worth 5 marks. By the way, if you happen to have a digital copy of the unit, I know a few people do. I found that link above in the dark blue. It was broken. It didn't seem to bring me to the right spot. I hunted around and found it. I don't know why this one works. It looks almost exactly the same, but I found this link was broken. So if you have the digital copy, it's all spelled exactly the same, but you may need to enter it into your URL because somehow it's been moved or something. And it just isn't coming up correctly. Okay, so hang on a sec. Okay, so who we are, financing. So you might want to just go into the general financing at first just to kind of see. Oh, okay. So what are the repayment terms and fees? Let's see. About, frequently asked questions might be useful too. Might be really useful. Yeah, that's got some good stuff there. All right. So look around, see if you can find what are the criteria you need to be able to get funding from them. 5 requirements. Okay. Entrepreneurs often benefit from a mentor. A mentor is any person who helps or assists another person or people in any way and is a source of encouragement, guidance, and support. Do you see yourself as playing a role of mentor in your own family and or in the community? Comment on this statement with 3 or 4 sentences, and that's worth 3 marks. I want to say there's no right or wrong answer for this question. You may not feel that you've got the age or experience to be an effective mentor, because I know I've got a really wide range of ages in this course. That's fine. But whatever age you are, there's always people younger than you that have less experience than you that might be helped by you. Even if you're, say, 16 or 17 years old. Well, okay, there's still maybe, kids in your community who are 9, 10, 11, 12 who could use someone to look up to, someone to help them. If you don't see yourself as a mentor now, then do you have any ideas about the kind of mentor you might become sometime in the future, right? And I know that might be a difficult thought, right? Sometimes it's hard to see how much we have to offer to other people and how much our support and our guidance might help another person. But you would be surprised how often other people could use a little bit of encouragement, a little word of wisdom to point the right way. And even if you may not think, oh, I'm not sure if I have that right now, maybe a few years down the road, you will have that. And who would you want to help? Maybe there's certain people, maybe there's, like people who are interested in a very traditional way of life, or people who are trying to become business people, or people who want to become involved in politics, or there may be kind of a certain area where you're wanting to mentor people, right? Okay, that covers the spot about the youth leadership stuff. We're going to keep going because I still have more time, but that might be a good stopping spot if you are just kind of listening, in terms of that might be a spot where you'd want to sit down, get some of that done. There's a lot of stuff here because we're getting kind of close to the end of the unit. So I apologize because I know I'm giving you a lot of information at once. So it's totally okay to stop a recording, do the work, and come back and finish the recording later, right? All right, how to write a formal letter, which we kind of did already. A formal letter uses formal language and format. You might write one to go with your resume, to register a complaint, or to ask for information of some sort. A formal letter includes a date, the address of the sender, the address of the recipient, the person who gets it, a formal greeting, a formal closing, and the body paragraphs explaining what the letter is all about. Have you ever written or received a formal letter? And what was the purpose behind it? Some possible formal letters you might have written: a cover letter, a housing request, a complaint about health services or travel accommodations, a job reference for someone who worked for you. Maybe you're trying to request access for specific information. Maybe you're asking for a company to come and put on a program for your community, like summer school or Bible school or entertainment or graduation ceremonies, right? If you're out there working, that might be part of your job, writing letters to people. So you may be very familiar with writing formal letters, or you may feel like you haven't really ever written a formal letter besides the cover letter assignment. That's why we're kind of covering it now, just in case. So in your book, it talks about this. These are the steps. Step 1, write the letter outline following the formal letter format. So the addresses, the greetings, the closing, everything but the body paragraphs. And if you look in the textbook, there's several examples right there around this article, right? Step 2, brainstorm a list of all the facts you want to include in the body paragraph. Step 3, choose which facts you want to use by highlighting or circling those parts. Step 4, put them in order. What fact is most important? Begin writing the opening sentence. This should clearly state the purpose of your letter. Sometimes people make this a paragraph all of its own to emphasize it. Like if you're writing to say, hey, I'm writing to complain because I bought your, I don't know, your blender, and within 2 weeks of using it, it immediately broke and I want a replacement. And then maybe you go into details. Or, hey, I would like to invite you to my community because we've heard great things about you. Here's the information we have about our community that might make you want to come, right? You're being very specific. It's like your opening thesis or topic statement. And then you're going to go into the paragraphs where you explain more stuff. So the rough draft is going to be 2 or 3 short paragraphs that state and explain your facts. Then step 7, you're going to write a short closing paragraph for your letter. That may only be a sentence or 2. That's fine. Normally we write longer paragraphs, but in a letter, because we generally switch each paragraph when you get to a new topic and a letter is short, your paragraph might be a little bit shorter than what it would be if we're just writing an assignment for school, okay? You may want to restate your purpose, just, or maybe you want to thank the reader for considering your request. Step 8, revise the letter. Go through, have you been clear? Have you said everything important? Is there anything unnecessary that you need to delete? Step 9, edit the work for grammar, spelling, and punctuation. Print or type your letter and sign your name. Be sure that your contact information, name, phone, and email address are on the letter so they can reach you, right? If it's a business letter, make sure it's your business phone, obviously, and your business email. Okay. So we talked about that because question number 6 is writing a letter. Using the sample letter on page 219 of your textbook, The Road Ahead, for content and format, you are to write a letter of your own to your manager or your supervisor at work. You will be making some sort of request or asking for some sort of favor. If you are presently unemployed, just imagine yourself in a certain workplace for the purpose of the assignment. So just like always, we're following the writing process. Any of the longer assignments, we just kind of need to get in the habit of just following the writing process. So as always, we kind of brainstorm, right? What are some things you might be asking? You might be asking for time off, might be asking to go from full-time to part-time. You might be asking for a raise. It's talking specifically about a request or a favor. So this isn't a complaint letter like we did on the previous one. So you're not really complaining, you're asking something. Maybe you're asking to move to a different office. Maybe you're asking for money for a larger budget. Maybe you're asking for certain coworkers to be on your team. Not all workplaces have teams, but some do. And maybe there's somebody that you've worked really well with, and you're like, hey, you know what? I would really like to invite so and so to work on the marketing team, the sales team, whatever. What else? Maybe you're asking for an intern ship to be started, or asking for donations for a charity support. That one sounds funny, but actually, like, it's not uncommon for businesses to have like a sports team that they support, and they help provide like the the uniforms and things like that. So it doesn't have to be these. There's maybe something else that you've got an idea for. But this is one you could start with, thinking about what would you write if you're working in an actual office right now. What are some things you actually wish you could ask for? I'm not sure why it's telling me that's. Why is it saying that's spelled wrong? It's not. This is probably an old-fashioned thing. To me, it needs the dash there, but I think in modern times they've dropped the dash, but it needs the dash to me. Okay. We've got a little bit of time. How to write and send email. This is on page 89. I feel like most people already understand how to use email. I don't really know if this is important, but when this book was written, it was still somewhat new, and many people might not have been familiar with it. Keep it in mind. An email should still follow the basic format of a letter. This is especially so if you're writing a formal letter as a complaint or a cover letter. Often you would design it outside of the email and then copy and paste it as the body text, or you might save your work and then send it with the email as an attachment. This is a really good way to send a letter that you think might need a hard copy, like a cover letter, right? Like sometimes your email is just going to be forwarded, or you're sending it to one person and they're the only person that's going to see it. But if you think it's something that might need to get printed out, then doing it as an attachment is a really great way to do it, because attachments are so easy to print. And it's not always easy to print an email so it looks nice, okay? Anything that you send as a letter is perfectly acceptable to send as an email these days. It didn't used to be, but these days for sure. Just remember to use the formality of an email. Don't write it as informally as you might write, say, a Facebook message, right? Or a text message on your phone. Things to keep in mind. Any work you do on a workplace computer can be tracked, read, and traced back to you. Don't write anything that you wouldn't feel comfortable with your boss knowing about you. Be sure the content is appropriate and your tone is polite. Some companies may have specific rules about email etiquette or specific formats. Be sure to check with your boss about this before you send anything. Change your password frequently. There is nothing worse than having a work email hacked. So not only people have got access to your personal information in your emails, but they can also send emails in your name that might be nasty or inappropriate. One quick point to keep in mind, if you're emailing work to me, is if you share it, I can't forward it to the secretary who logs it into our system. So please save your work and attach it. If you take a photo of your work, same thing, save it and attach it to the email. If you just put the photo into the text, it's really hard for me to open and download at an appropriate size. If you are doing your writing in a Google Doc, after you write the letter, you can save it in a variety of ways. The most common format is to save it as a PDF, but you can also save it to go into Microsoft Word if you're more comfortable with that. And then once you've saved it, you want to move it to a more appropriate folder. It's currently going to be in your downloads folder unless you already put it somewhere else. You might have a file called letters, or maybe you've got one called OLC. Oh, it's not OLC 40, ENG3E. If you save the letter in a file, you remember, because it is easy to retrieve it and attach to an email. I'm sorry. I, again, teach multiple courses here. Sorry. I thought I fixed that. Okay, so I'm not sure if everybody knows how to attach a document, because I know a lot of people are just used to forwarding things. So compose your email, and then once you're finished composing, if you look at the bottom, there's like a little paperclip icon. If you click on that, a window will open that allows you to browse your documents. So here's next. See, it's opening my things up. Once I find what I want, if I click open, it will show up here and it will attach it to my email. I won't have to do anything else. It's already in the middle of that, triggered by hitting this attachment icon. Okay. Once I hit open, it'll attach it by itself. Then, while the file is downloading, you're going to see a long blue bar. And once it's finished downloading, the file name will change color. So for example, this one in blue has downloaded, but this one here in black, it hasn't finished downloading yet. Okay. It's really important. Don't send the email until the file has fully downloaded, or the person who gets it is not going to be able to read and access the file, right? I've had that happen a few times where people sent me an email with the work attached, but I think maybe they didn't wait quite long enough and it wasn't actually there for me to read. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I totally am aware this is a lot of work. Take the time you need to finish up before going on to the next video. Be sure to call me if you're having trouble with an assignment. I will be in the office for the next hour, and then I'm back in the studio again. And then tomorrow we will work on the next few assignments, right? We only have 3 more days left for this course. Thank you so much for showing up today, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.